the moral case, the very clear, strong moral case that those who didn't cause the economic crisis should not be those who shoulder the burden. That those who were responsible are being bailed out, let off, and that an economic system which failed us is being propped up again by economic policies which don't only create that moral revulsion in, I suspect, all of us here who've come along tonight, but economic policies which are also wrong-headed even in their own terms. But there are some forms of language, I think, which have helped to create the consent which the UK government has managed to acquire to at least enough extent that it's achieved another term in government in the last UK election. I don't think it would be possible, for example, for successive UK governments to be doing what they've done to the welfare state. And you're quite right to challenge the way we describe that, and I prepare language around social security and social protection as well. But I don't think they would be able to do, I don't think they'd be able to get away with what they've been doing to a legacy we should be proud of that was built in the generation after the Second World War, if it hadn't been for the way that language has been used to demonise and to stigmatise those who are in need of social protection, those who are recipients of welfare. I'm a welfare recipient, I'm on benefits, I receive a benefit every day of my life from living in a society where people have access to healthcare, where people have access to education, where people pay collectively for certain functions of our society, from running basic public services to keeping the roads in some state of semi-decent repair. I'm on benefits. The wealthiest person, you could be a billionaire in our society, and you're on benefits. Every day of your life you receive a benefit from the fact that people pay for certain things collectively. And yet, the stigma which has been built up with language like strivers versus skivers, and that old favourite, hard-working families. We're on the side of hard-working families. As though those are the only people who matter? As though those are the only people whose basic human dignity matters? Hard-working families is one of these phrases which is used by politicians to imply, I'm on your side. You're a hard one, I'm on your side. What it actually means is, I'm on your side and not your neighbour's. Your neighbour is the person to resent. Your neighbour is the person to feel alienated from and to make feel alienated from society. And that's the way this divide and rule kind of language operates. This kind of language, this use of language, is phenomenally powerful, both in building a vision of a better society and in acquiring the consent to destroy the things which make our society better. When we talk about social protection, when we talk about the language of a society that looks after its citizens from cradle to grave, that was another powerful piece of language which acquired the consent to build something better. The use of language is incredibly powerful. One of the forms of this language which was powerful in the tail end of the last Labour UK government, when they handed over the reins of power after an election to a coalition, an election in which none of those three major UK parties was offering anything other than a variant of austerity. When they handed over the keys to the offices and a note was written by an outgoing minister with the apology saying there's no money left. And that lodged itself in the popular consciousness in a very powerful way. An absurd statement for someone who was the Chief Secretary of the Treasury to say. The phrase, there's no money left, is not absurd if you're a householder and you don't have any money left to pay your bills or to pay your rent or to buy food for the week. That's not an absurd statement if you're an individual or a household or a family or a business that looks like you're going to have to lay people off because you can't afford to compete against giant multinationals that are dodging their taxes. If you're in those positions, the statement, there's no money left, makes sense. But if you're the Chief Secretary to the Treasury and you don't understand that money for a national economy is not a fixed pot, and once it's spent, it's gone, then you don't deserve ever to have been in that job. The statement, there's no money left, when they've just been creating vast amounts of money at your expense, and not putting it into the real economy, but putting it back into this casino economy that failed us so badly in the first place. And yet, there's no money left became this incredibly powerful tool by those who want to continue to prop up that failed economic model, drive it even deeper, and use the kind of alienation of people from one another to defend the social harm that is the inevitable consequence of running that economic system even harder. So I think one of the things that we have to do is find the language, find the powerful forms of words which reconnect one another to the natural social instinct to care for one another, to have empathy. And I think it's really important to remember that that is the truth of who we are as human beings, as a social species. We are empathetic, we are social. Today is the last day of a week-long tour that I've been doing, visiting some branches around the country, as far north as Orkney and Thurso, and from east to west of the country. And one of the common themes has been meeting people who've been organising not only collection of materials and resources and money, but the collection of people's skill and time and creativity to respond to the humanitarian crisis that's been developing in Europe over several years now, getting worse and worse and worse, but has been most acute, most recently with the likes of the refugee camp in Calais and in other places. A humanitarian crisis on a scale like we haven't seen for generations in the European Union. And the human empathy that is there, that is the natural response, is utterly overwhelming. It's inspiring. And this, after months, no years, no actually decades of people being bombarded with messages daily from the mainstream media and from many on the right of the political spectrum saying, hate these people, resent these people, fear these people are the threat. And those messages have not extinguished that basic human empathy. It is still there, it is still strong, because it's the natural human response when we see people in problems and in crisis. You see it at the simplest, smallest level. You know, if you see somebody trip in the street, you'll see people reach out instinctively because they see a human being. They don't need to see that they're a friend. They don't need to see that they support the same football team or share the same religious beliefs or political beliefs or are part of the same community. People just reach out instinctively. And if you see a human being in trouble, that's the natural response. And I think we need to be really proud of that and find ways to communicate that and celebrate that, because when people do see human beings instead of stereotypes that the Daily Mail or Nigel Farage or any of the other voices on the right would like us to see, when people see human beings, the natural response is there and is strong to reach out. And we have to tap into that, not just in relation to that refugee crisis, which is still unfolding, but in relation to the social crisis which is emerging and which will get worse if austerity continues to bite. Because people will be in crisis in our communities. And the natural response of people, if they see those people as human beings, if they see faces and names and understand human stories and experiences, rather than just seeing skivers and scroungers versus me, I'm the hard-working family. If people see that human experience, the natural response will be to reach out and to connect and to understand and to empathise, and then hopefully to build a strong, resilient community together who can oppose those actions that are driving this economic system to do such damage. So that's one of the things that I think we have to do as this social crisis continues, is to find those human stories, allow people to connect and to share that natural human response of empathy, and then to go on and build something that's strong and resilient. And I think we can do that. I think the last thing I want to say in these opening remarks, and I hope we've got plenty of time for questions, is about practical steps that government also needs to take, because it's not enough to point the finger at Westminster and at the Tory government and how wicked they are, or at the right-wing press who assert that these kind of economic policies are inevitable and necessary. It's not enough to know who to blame. We also have to be able to take actions. And you're right that we should be challenging any institution, from a university to a local council, to service providers, whether they're in the public sector, the voluntary sector, or those privatised public services which are being operated by private sector organisations which won't pay people the living wage. We must challenge every single one of those, but we also have to take steps which make that challenge answerable. It's not enough just to say no. We also have to make that challenge answerable. And over the coming months, we've got the opportunity to push Scottish politics to go beyond the comfort zone of just blaming Westminster and actually take steps which allow us to raise the revenue from those who already have it. Wealth inequalities in this country are deeper and more socially divisive as time goes on than income inequalities, and we have to make sure that we have a taxation system which closes both those gaps, the wealth and income inequality gaps in our society. And if we do that, we will be able to raise the revenue from those who, whether they're land banking and holding Scottish land in offshore tax havens, whether they're operating businesses and siphoning their profits out of the local economy, we will be able to raise revenue progressively and fairly that allows us to protect those public services that we value and protect the investment in an economy which will provide a good, decent quality of life for people in the long run. Because unless we address some of those productivity issues, unless we create that strong local economy which can create the homes, the jobs that we need for the future, then any attempt to reduce the deficit only can result in increasing private debt, which already outstrips public debt anyway and is a more expensive form of debt. So unless we address those issues and invest in the future, then I think all the anger in the world will bring us to nothing. So over the next few months, I think we need to challenge every political party, challenge my party, but challenge every political party as well, to go beyond its comfort zone and show how the revenue can be raised fairly and progressively. Even since 1999, the Scottish Parliament has had the ability to levy any form of tax that it wants, so long as it's investing in local services, not national. And it's a disgrace that we haven't scrapped and replaced the council tax already with something better. Well, we need to do that, and we need to do it fast in order to raise the revenue progressively, especially from those who hoard wealth in our society. That's something that we need to do if local authorities and universities and any other institution is going to be able to have a practical plan that will reverse the cuts. That's something we can do. We've got the capability to do. All we need, I believe, is the courage over the coming months to challenge all of our Scottish politicians from all political parties to set out practical plans to make that achievable. It's within our grasp, and I think we have to set ourselves that challenge. Thanks very much.
I would like to tell you about the first time I ever experienced austerity. There was actually a rhyme that went with it. It was in 1980, and it was about the milk snatcher. Remember though? Anybody who's done any kind of political history? There was a woman called Margaret Thatcher, and before she became the Prime Minister, she actually stole all our milk. Well, that's how it was told when I was at school anyway. And I was in primary 6 and we lost the school milk, and that was a form of austerity. And I'll be completely honest, I would say today's austerity is just a follow-on from that. We've now got the son of Thatcher in the form of David Cameron and all his cronies. It's a generational thing. My generation were the generation that were born of the baby boomers. My parents had to leave school at 15 to get jobs to go into the purse of the household. They then married and were able to buy a house in 1972 in Invergowrie for £5,000. The same house today, if you were to go along and ask the landlord to be the tenant, you would pay £6,500 in rent. Now, we wonder where austerity comes from. It's a no-brainer. When you used to get a penny for going for a sweetie, it was a penny that was going for a sweetie. Everything has changed, and so has society. The fact that we moved from a multi-storey into a village, everything changed. The nuclear family was basically destroyed. We became a little bit like an American sort of scenario. You would have the family broken up because people had to go and work and find work outside the city because there wasn't work in the various cities. So the collective, as we were talking about previously, the collectiveness was lost. You're obviously here this evening because you want to hear more and learn more and be able to work for what you could do. Did people bring today the tin from the shop, or did you bring anything for the food bank? No?
There's a food bank collection stall at the...
Yes, so everybody had an opportunity to do that. Now, that's wrong that we should have to do that. I was a surveyor, and I decided after the referendum that I was going to have to kick that into touch, because I was surrounded by an ideology that just didn't sit well with me. We're talking ideologies again. I was working for bankers and administrators who were going in and basically asset stripping, and I couldn't do it any longer, and my conscience, it couldn't last. So I decided to go back to college. So today I got my bursary, but last week I had £2.82 in my purse, and I should have been in the food bank because I'm a lone parent and my son's 14 years old, but I'm very lucky that I have a structure in my family. I have parents who were able to take me to the supermarket and buy me food. Now, I know a few people in the room and they'll always say, oh, you look lovely. And if you know me really well, you'll know that I have a challenge, the £30 outfit challenge. I never go out the house without knowing that I've got £30 worth of clothes to make me look sensible. Austerity is affecting everybody. I read up on what austerity was about, and they were talking about the fact that it was people not being able to buy luxuries. It's not luxuries, it's necessities that people can't buy nowadays. Okay, so tonight, bursary came in, so I left my son with my debit card so he could go and get himself a Domino's pizza. A Domino's pizza shouldn't be a treat for a 14-year-old child. And that's really how it goes. And I was asked today for gender balance, I think, apart from anything else, but also to talk about austerity and how it does affect people. And I don't think that a lot of their Daily Mail readers or the Express readers would actually be able to come into this room and say, oh, look at her, she looks like she should be a food bank. People demonise, as Patrick has said, and the more that we understand that everybody has been affected by this, then the better. When I was, previous to being a surveyor, I actually worked overseas, and I fell pregnant and had to go to the doctors. So I went to the doctors, and it was an amazing place. I went to see a proper baby doctor, OB-GYN or whatever they call them in America, and it was fabulous. But then when I got to the door, the lady went like that, and I had to give them €200. And that was 15 years ago. So I can imagine that's a lot more now. So is that what we want? They talk about the fact that the NHS is ring-fenced, but we all see that that's becoming less and less obvious, and the NHS is the next thing that's going. How, as the people in society, going to survive if the next thing you have to do is pay every time you have to go to the doctors or the hospital? And they're right, the people are right, we have to do something about it, and you guys who are here are the generation of the future, and I don't want to be creeping around, still doing my 4th degree, saying, right, okay guys, what have we got now? We have to stand up, like everybody said, and try and make a difference and tell them that austerity isn't right. Bankers did this, and I've seen it because I was working within it, and the bankers are still doing it, and they're still getting bailed out, and they're still getting looked after, and ordinary, hard-working, doesn't matter if you're hard-working, it's just ordinary people who need the support are the ones that are losing out. And I, as a women's officer, have organised food bank collections before, and it's been specifically for female gender, so it's been deodorants and it's been sanitary products and things. So as a society, we are helping each other but what's happened to the help from above that should be filtering down? It's like the wine glass, where everything's going and nothing's coming down. So that's my view on austerity, and it's very personal, and hopefully you appreciate that as the fact, and I hope it gives you a better understanding of what austerity is actually about.
Yeah, my name's Stuart Fairweather. I'm a member of the Democratic Left Scotland. I'm a Dundonian, you might guess for the way you speak, and I'm a community worker. Thanks for the invite to come along. I'm glad to be speaking alongside folk from political parties. I'm particularly glad Lynne's here. I wasn't here for the gender balance, I was here because we couldn't get anybody else, is that right? Anyway, I want to say something about austerity. I'm going to tell you something about myself, and I'm going to say something about action. When I think about austerity, Beatrix Campbell's phrase, Beatrix Campbell's a journalist and feminist author, she talks about constant economic emergency. When Bea was writing initially, she was talking about specific families in the north of England that had experienced hardship during a period of riots. Some of the communities in the north of England had turned to riots, and as a response to hardship, and it's important to understand that the dynamics in those communities weren't always healthy. She also talked about the rough and the respectable living next door to each other, and the dynamics between women and men, between black community and the white community, were torn because of the pressure that was put on from outside. So I agree with Carlo when he says we've got to revive the notion of social security. We've got to revive the reaching out that Patrick talked about. But that means overcoming our own sectional interests. It means working together and recognising that austerity affects people on the basis of their race and their gender and their class. And it affects them in the workplace, and it affects them in their community, and it affects them where they study. The fact that landlords at Dundee and Big Nigel at Abertay are wanting to turn the educational institutions of this city into businesses is something that you folks are dealing with on a daily basis. I think we should be talking about that. I think we should be talking about what's happening at Dundee and Angus College. We should certainly be talking about what's happening in Nine Wells, and we should be talking about the 23 million that Dundee City Council plans to, it's not done it yet, plans to vote on removing from its own budget on the 25th of February. So, what do we do? I think the fact that we're told there's no alternative needs to be challenged. It is about language, as Patrick was suggesting, and the language that has been engendered to counter that notion of there is no alternative is enough is enough. It's not a very complex statement, it's not a very overly complicated statement, but the trade unionists in the city have come together and talked about enough is enough. And the reason we're saying that isn't it just because 23 million, where I come from, is a lot of money. We're saying that because the subtraction of 23 million from the city's budget is becoming the new normal. What can I tell you about? My young lass bought us a hat. She bought us, it'll be in here somewhere. And my good friend Mike Arnott put a picture of us up on Facebook. And I noticed that I had the same hat 3 years ago, which is not that unusual for me. But the thing that was interesting about the hat was I was wearing it when I was outside the City Council involved in a deputation where Unite the Union, alongside other unions, was saying Dundee stands against the cuts. And 3 years ago, when we were taking that deputation to the council, we were talking about the council cutting 2 or 3 million from the annual budget. Now we're talking about the council cutting 23 million in 1 year from the annual budget. So it's an ongoing process, and it's a process that we want to halt, and ideally we want to construct a different Dundee, a different vision of the future. So that halting is the first thing that we want to do. I was going to talk to you about dates in the calendar, about the 23 million. In November, the Chief Executive of the Council came to all the unions, Unite, my union, and Unison, and the GMB, and the other unions. There's always loads of unions, I can tell you about that on another occasion. Anyway, came to all the unions and said that they was going to institute budget cuts. We said, okay, we didn't like that, we didn't think it's necessary, we think loads of people have got wealth, we think loads of people experience the inequality of income in our society. We don't think you should be doing this, but tell us the details of what you're going to do. Bring us the local politicians alongside you and tell us what you're going to do. Because the unique thing about cuts to the local council budget is our employers, the 28 city councillors, are also our employees. They're meant to do a job for us, they're meant to do a job for Dundonians. So they came and they said, yes, we plan to listen to what Mr Osborne says, and then we'll plan to listen to what Mr Swinney says, and then we'll hear what we think, and then we'll institute 23 million budget cuts in the city. And that poisonous pass the parcel from London to Edinburgh to our city is what we've experienced. So, that was in November. It's taken them until the start of February to give us any indication of what that 23 million cuts will look like. So on the, what a meeting with Daniel and Gordon, Bridget, thank you, and some of the shop stewards. And we decided we would go and noise up the council a wee bit. And we decided to bring the shop stewards together to do what Carlo was asking, to try and re-engender the notion of collectivity. And that was enough to spook the council into releasing the papers, releasing the budget papers. Our friends were saying, you need to get in the paper, you need to speak to the press, you need to personalise these stories. So we've done some of that. And rather than the picture of me and some of the shop stewards going in the paper, the council released the detail of the budget. And the detail of the budget, nobody said this to me exactly, but the feeling that they want to give to me in the negotiations is, well, 23 million really isn't that much. 200 people going, at least 200 people going from jobs in the city really isn't that much. 200 jobs that people here would want to be applying for. 200 posts in quality employment in the City Council are going. More than 200 people will be affected because of full-time equivalents, some part-time folk will go. And what that reduction this year, if it goes ahead, in the workforce of the City Council will mean is that we're less able to reach out, that we're less able to engender a spirit of collectivity, that there'll be more reliance on the voluntary and third sector, that there'll be more reliance on food banks. So we're saying enough is enough. We organised the demonstration. We invited Marie along, we organised a demonstration, we invited people from the health service along. We decided to have a demonstration in a blizzard on the 30th of January. Made for good pictures, it was really cold. 500 people turned up. The councillors are saying that's not really enough. We saw you, It's important that people walk through the streets. It's important that people express their opinion. But we don't think that in the first instance we should go back to Mr. Swinney and ask him for more money to plug that gap. Listen, get it by your phone. You're saying weekend where he bites. It's just not the road. You're saying we'll book the bus. But it's important that we don't get trapped in pitching one political party against another. I'm a member of Democratic Left Scotland. We've got members in the Green Party and in the SNP and in Labour even and in the Scottish Socialist Party. Most of the members aren't in any political party. We bring them together to support action and consider ideas. We think we need all the political parties working with civil society, working with the trade unions, working with the community groups to take on the Tories. Because the thing that we're scared of, and the best tell people here rather than soft soap them, is yes, we're concerned about the 23 million this year, but we're concerned about the 23 million or similar figure that comes every year for the next period that the Tories are in government in Westminster. And people will have different feelings about Jeremy Corbyn and the like, but let's just say it this way, it's no in the bag that the Tories lose the next Westminster election. So we could be seeing the withdrawal of a significant proportion of the budget for our city for the time being, unless we do something about it. 2 dates. The 19th of February, we have tried to change the narrative, change the language, and rather than wait for the budget setting meeting, we've invited all 28 councillors from all the political parties to come to a meeting. Alongside them, we've invited the MSPs and the MPs. 19th of February is Friday night. Imagine having a meeting on Friday night. But at 6 p.m. in Chambers East, which is the hall above the Brewdog, we are inviting the councillors to come and put their case directly to our members, to the shop stewards and trade union representatives that represent the workforce. But that meeting's open to anybody. And if we're looking for a lesson about how to challenge cuts, how to turn the language around, I think folk might want to be there. And what it is, in addition to being a lesson about austerity and challenging austerity, is it's the warm-up act for the 25th of February. On the 25th of February, we're asking folk to be in Dundee City Square from 2:30. We're asking them to be outside the budget setting meeting. In Oxford today, I know what put people off. In Oxford today, the budget setting meeting took 11 hours because people were putting forward the case about shutting children's centres and shutting libraries or whatever they were on the front line there. Don't think that the meeting's going to be that length, but it's going to be of that importance. It's important that folk from all walks of life are there on the 25th of February. When I was a kid, the ski mask stayed in. This is the last thing, honest. The ski mask stayed in on the edge of the town. Had a couple of streets that were a bit of an issue. It used to be called Fingarth and Fincraig Street, and they come along with a brilliant idea. What we'll do is we'll change them to Grampian Gardens and Cheviot Crescent, and that will solve all the problems. We'll rename them and nobody will notice the poverty, nobody will notice the impact of austerity. That was 2 streets with 400 families maybe. Today, across Dundee, in a city of 140,000, 40,000 people by the Scottish Government's own definition are in poverty. It's gone from 400 families to 40,000 people. Lynne's right, folk that are dealing with the impact of austerity are in this room. Includes yourself, includes some of us. That's why we need to be there on the 25th of February. That's why we need to make it loud and clear to our councillors that they need to act on our behalf And if they want to go and visit John Swinney, that's great. And if John Swinney says it's no me, it's George Osborne, that's fair enough too. We can get the bus to go to London just as easy as we can get the bus to go to Edinburgh. And we start the fight back in Dundee, and then everybody else, even folk from Glasgow, will copy with.